knows what you should be doing, even though they don't know your life, your stories, your desires, your fears, your family, your obligations. I'm hoping this podcast gives you the opportunity to think about what you want, to listen to your still small voice. Welcome back this week. This is the second Sunday of August in 2026. And depending on where you are and what is going on around you, to the people in your life, you are in the second week of August, which might still be summer, or it might be a back to school sort of time, or it might be when you take your annual vacation, or it could be any number of things. So as on this second week of August, where maybe also depending on where you live, at least for here, it is sometimes at least a little bit cooler in the morning. The air has definitely changed. It is still hot and humid in the middle of the day, but I can tell because I can actually sit out on the porch at night and in the morning and take walks without being instantly drenched in sweat. So there's a change in the air, though it's still summer, but definitely more of a time thinking maybe towards the fall. I find that around this time of year, like I'm ready for the transition. I'm ready for the change. I'm always ready for autumn and winter. I'm always ready to cozy up and disappear from the world. I'm definitely ready, always ready to get rid of my obligations, which is telling for a different reason. So it can feel weird when it's still summer, but there's other things to be doing or other things to be thinking about. And I think about this a lot of, whose timeline am I on? There is always the natural timeline. Nature is always going to be nature and do her thing, and sometimes depending upon what the seasons bring, what the weather brings. This year we totally skipped spring, at least where I was, and noticed, however, though, that our flowers, our crepe myrtles, just everything is blooming much more this year and staying bloomed, staying vibrant and fresh much, much longer than it had in the past. It's been about 2 weeks with kind of the crepe myrtles kind of hanging every day it rains, but then they are still bright and fresh and not dying as fast as they have in the past. So again, whose timeline are we on? Every other year up until now for the last 10, I'd never seen this before. And now all of a sudden, it almost feels like while I'm in this dry kind of fallish air, everything is much more vibrant and green and lush than it's ever been before, even in the depths of spring. And I think about, we have our standards of what we think happen, not even our standards, but just even our life experiences. Gosh knows I don't want to start thinking about, what people say this should be or that should be. That's not where I'm going. But we have our experiences of what we think summer and spring and winter and autumn should be like, and kind of what the world does around us, what the trees do around us, kind of what the calendars are, kind of what's expected. And it can be a pleasant surprise when it is beautiful and something unexpected and happy, and can also be not such a pleasant surprise, when things don't go the way you've planned or kind of where you expected. I can think of many summers with bug infestations and just everything died pretty quickly, and just it was brown and almost gray even in the middle of August. And that's not an expected quote unquote summer either. Just as spring kind of being here in the middle of August isn't expected either. And again, whose timeline are we on? Clearly nature is going to do what nature does, and we kind of can either follow it or not to our own peril. But I think of how much I make myself go on a timeline that's totally arbitrary, totally made up, and definitely not influenced by anything that has kindness, care, patience, or even a reality kind of plugged into it. I think of nature balances itself out when things don't go right. And, so this year we didn't have spring, but now we kind of have this beautiful, lush summer, which we hadn't had. But how many times do I let myself, when I skip a thing I wanted to do, or I skip a plan, or I push myself to do something I don't want to do, and then do I actually give myself the break later, or do I keep avoiding the things I really want to do, and then do I ever get to them? And I know the older you get, kind of the more, at least for me, look back and you're like, did I do this right? Should I have done this? Or why did I waste so much time not doing the thing I wanted to do all these years? I can beat myself up coming and going. I imagine that I'm not the only one here. And so kind of for me in this subliminal time of a beautiful, beautiful springish August, which is blowing my mind, where am I doing that to myself in my own life? And how am I causing an imbalance? And why do I think that spring always has to be in the spring or summer always has to be in the summer? Because nature kind of does what it does and puts some stuff in there for us, whether or not we want it to some years or others. And I'm thinking about that in my own life of, right now it's August and it's the end of summer and tends to be a challenge for me. But at the same time, I'm like, well, what can I do differently? It doesn't have to be summer. What if I made it fall? And I kind of have inadvertently thinking more about harvesting and kind of cleaning up. And it is the first month of harvest. If you think about it, we've already had all of these fruits and vegetables at the market here in the northern hemisphere for summer, and the zucchini and the tomatoes are being passed around to get them off people's hands. So it is the truth. But in my mind, I'm like, so what am I doing? Like what am I doing with my life? It's another time of year, like it always is, to check in of what am I actually doing with my life. And I think we talk about that as if it's something we only do once or twice or 3 times in our lifetimes. And I feel like many people, we're actually asking that every single day, maybe not every single moment, but a lot more often maybe than we would have even done it 10, 20 years ago. It is a completely different world, and things, every year, I think they say this, things are changing so rapidly. But it is the truth. It's not a trite thing. We do have so much more information, so much more coming at us, so much more we are able to do. There's just so many factors that, of course, we were probably asking this question much, much more often than we would in the past about, what are we doing? What's the point of all of this? So for me, I'm taking this kind of springy summer as a call of I can be my wonderfully autumn self whenever I want to be, including in summer, including in spring, should we get to have a spring again, which hopefully we will. Yeah, I mean, even the rain this year, the rain has all didn't come in spring, it has come in these last couple weeks. So again, nature balances itself. Nature goes out of, quote unquote, out of routine or out of timeline, and there's nothing saying we can't. I think of the many years that I kind of functioned, but really was sort of in a down period. Those who knew me well knew that was the case, though you wouldn't have seen it if you had just met me on the street. Maybe you would have. But I think we all have those cycles, and I think I don't give myself enough credit during those cycles that, it's allowed to be a down period. You can still function, and you can still be in the middle of summer and just not be with it. You can still be in the middle of winter and decide you want to party. You get to do whatever you want instead of in all these cyclical things. Again, you can use it as guidance, but ultimately you get to make the call for you, because whose timeline are we on? We're on our own. And I think there are challenges with that when you have to take full responsibility for your timeline and not be guided or persuaded by anybody else. With great responsibility comes great freedom, and with great freedom comes massive responsibility. So I think that's where I am telling myself that, my timeline is mine and nobody else's, and your timeline is yours and nobody else's. And whether or not I feel like I should be doing or something or saying something or be in this part of my life or vice versa, we ultimately sometimes, I think, don't get to make that call. So instead of torturing myself that I am not a summer person or that I am just not really feeling any of this, it is time for me for harvest. And maybe with some of that back to school energy, maybe that might be part of it as well for some people. I think if it works for you, roll with it. If it doesn't, don't. I mean, that is the summary of essentially everything I've ever wanted to say. So there you go. If it works, do it. If it doesn't, don't. So I hope that this message finds you well this week. And we've got a couple more weeks till the end of summer. Isn't that crazy? I mentioned I might go through September. I, at this point, don't think I will. I think I will be finishing up on a Labor Day as my timeline and my ideas and my calling, so to speak, my version of nature is leading me in a different direction. So, but I will see you for another 3 or 4, and then we'll take a break probably again until 2027. Thanks so much, everyone, for following me this summer, and I hope it has been a good one and has given you whatever you need. And I'll be back next week in the middle of August, and we'll see how we all feel then. In the meantime, keep listening.
Thanks for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, I'm so glad. If you didn't, that's great too. Thanks for giving it a try. You can do all the things: subscribe, rate, review, emoji it up if you feel so called. I appreciate any feedback you have. Please reach out to me on Facebook at The Still Small Voice Whisperer.